Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm talking today about how to communicate effectively in relationships. And this was something I was pondering over the weekend. And I was just really giving it some thought about how people go about expressing themselves in relationships nowadays and what an issue that actually is for so many people. Um, because I've recognized that there's a lot of people that really don't know how to like effectively get across what they need from another person. Um, a lot of times the issue actually starts and stems from their own lack of awareness of what they actually need or what they are truly desiring in a partnership or in a relationship. So if you're one of those people who are just kind of in a relationship but you're kind of like, like it could be better. If it's really not fulfilling, if it's really not, um, if it's just not what you're truly looking for, then there might be some information in this video for you that will be really, really helpful if you actually apply yourself. Because in talking to people, and I talk to like a lot of people who are obviously in relationship, and 9 times out of 10, the number one issue that I recognize within these relationships is a communication barrier. There's just such a lack of appropriate communication. And the reason why that happens is because most of us get so trapped in our ego minds and in our inflated egos and our wounded egos that we are constantly looking for this validation within our partner. We're constantly looking for them to validate to us that we're okay and that we're good enough and this and that. And that's a really rocky foundation to build a relationship on. You actually can't build anything solid on insecurity, right? Like you just can't, because when you come into a relationship with insecurity, then you're just bringing so much baggage. You're bringing so much like unhealed wounds, so many things that you haven't processed, that you haven't looked at, that you haven't really taken the time to like fix within yourself and like adjust within yourself, right? And obviously most people have no idea really what it means to do spiritual work, really what it means to apply yourself, to actually go through a healing process, to like give yourself time to recover from like say a bad relationship, or to actually heal and understand what the purpose of that relationship was, right? And this is where, and I don't want to get into it too much, but there's like karmic relationships, and then there's like soulmate relationships, and then there's twin flame relationships. So there's like levels of relationships that we have available to us to experience in any given lifetime. The choice is always ours in terms of, it's the soul's choice before coming to Earth, actually, to figure out, what kind of relationships am I going to need to go through and experience in this lifetime to actually evolve myself, to actually go above and beyond and like elevate past the bullshit and like learn some karmic lessons and like be done with those karmic lessons and cycles and then like get off of them, right? And so that's just kind of really taking it back before anything. But I'm mentioning this because it's important to know and to understand what kind of a connection you're in, what kind of a relationship you're in, because if you don't even get that or understand that, then you're really going to kind of miss the lessons. You're going to miss the purpose of why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. And when I talk to people and they're complaining and they're telling me like different difficulties and stuff that they're having with their partner, it's always because there's so many unhealed shit underneath. There's just so much baggage, emotional, spiritual, mental baggage that those individuals come to that connection with, that they never process. That is what always ends up creating a lot of issues and more baggage in the relationship itself. And so I'm recognizing now that if people were just, aware enough, why do I always get hiccupy? But if people were just always aware enough to see like, okay, there's certain things I don't like in this relationship. Let me first assess and figure out, what does this relationship really represent to me? Like, what does it actually feel like? Does it feel like a karmic connection? So a karmic connection is usually challenging. There's always difficulties. There's always lessons to be learned. There's always, bullshit that's going to come up, and there's going to be disagreements. There's going to be things where you're not on the same page. There might be a lot of things where you're not on the same page. There's just a lot of different factors to karmic relationships, but karmic relationships tend to be usually difficult. They're not easy. And the reason why they're not easy is that is the purpose of the karmic relationship, is to help you learn certain lessons, to help you understand all the things that you can move past and elevate out of if you so choose, right? And that individual is only mirroring back to you certain things that you need to learn. If they're abusive to you, like verbally abusive, then you have issues with boundaries. You have issues with self-respect and self-love, right? Because we wouldn't tolerate those things when you're in high vibe. When you're in this place of like, you know what, I'm good. Like, I know who I am. I love myself, and you don't get to talk to me that way, right? Like, that takes a certain level of understanding. It takes a certain level of self-love to actually see that, right? And so many times when people are disrespectful to each other in relationships, and this is like, it goes both ways. It's not just men being disrespectful to women. I see women actually being hugely disrespectful also to men. And a very interesting thing I learned recently is that in any given connection, men are always seeking respect while women are seeking love. So like, let that sink in for a minute. So ladies, like, if you're out there and you're disrespecting your man constantly, like you're talking down to him and calling him nasty names, even if you're jokingly doing it, I'm going to encourage you to stop, because the more you do that, the more you actually turn him off, and the more you push him away, the more that you're just kind of like digging and clawing away at his like self-esteem and his willingness, his desire to love you, right? And again, this goes both ways. Like, if a man is doing that to a woman, it's like every word, every time you put her down, man, like she's like inching further and further away from you, emotionally and spiritually and mentally and physically. And this is why so often people end up cheating, is because there's such a lack of respect in relationships. And if there's a lack of respect, that means really that there's no love either, because respect comes from love, right? And so if you're experiencing this, then you have to really ask yourself, like, are there things that we can change in this relationship? Or is this a karmic person? Is this a person that's just going to continue being narcissistic? They're going to continue being self-centered and selfish? Are they going to continue being, verbally abusive towards me, and God forbid, maybe even physically abusive? Like, there are so many red flags that we get when we enter relationships. And I know, because there have been so many red flags in certain relationships that I have been in the past that, I just kind of ignored. And I was just like, oh, but maybe, this, that, and then like, oh, and I'll save him, right? No, there's no saving. Like, you don't save people when it comes to relationships. People have to save themselves. And that was a tough lesson for me to learn. I learned that with my daughter's father, that like, we don't save people. We simply come into contact with, or come into a relationship with people, because there are certain lessons that need to be learned. There are certain things that are meant to help you evolve. And usually those lessons come in the form of challenges and difficulties, disrespect, a lack of love, a lack of compassion, a lack of understanding. So there was all these different things. Like, I didn't recognize how much, like, for example, with him, I didn't match. And all the red flags that, I saw initially when I first met him, I was willing to dismiss and brush off and ignore, because I didn't have the level of self-love and self-respect and self-honor to know that was like, huge red flag, walk away, right? And I didn't know, and that's okay. Like, again, he was a karmic for me, and I was like supposed to go through that process. I was supposed to have that journey with him for the amount of time that we had that journey, so that I could learn self-love and self-respect, and so that I could learn to establish boundaries. My God, I sucked at boundaries. I did not have boundaries for the longest time with so many people. And it was because I never had boundaries as a kid. Like, my boundaries were never respected as a child, right? So it became super normal for me to constantly overrun my own boundaries, and then allow other people to trample all over them too, right? So and he was fantastic actually in teaching me boundaries and teaching me how to love myself through his actions, right? Like, him just doing his thing and being himself, And the toxicity and the baggage and everything else that he was bringing into the relationship was 100% like my training. It was like boot camp, you know. It was like emotional boot camp. Like, hey man, can you can you recognize your own worth and not put up with this, and like not be okay with this? You know, and it took time, right? But at the same time, again, I'm so grateful for that experience. I'm grateful for the process. Like, it really pushed me to wake up, to help me see that, like, I deserve so much more than what he ever could have given me. And you know, and it's so interesting because I don't feel like any resentment. I don't feel any anger, any animosity. Like, there's nothing like negative that I feel towards him now. Like, it's like I finally have come to this place within my own heart, within myself, where I feel completely balanced, and like I'm good, and you know, we can just co-parent our daughter in like a balanced way, and he provides her whatever she needs, and I provide her whatever she needs, and it just kind of works out now. But you know, it was a journey to get here, man. Like, it was a process to get here, and it was a lot of inner work on my part to get here, to get myself here, where I can truly be okay with him, you know, existing and just being the way that he is. I don't try to change him anymore. I don't want to change him in any way. I just have acceptance and compassion for his journey also, you know. And so recognizing what kind of a relationship you're in, you know, am I in a karmic relationship? Am I in a soulmate relationship? If you're in a soulmate relationship, you usually feel that. And you feel that because you genuinely love your partner. And it doesn't mean that it's perfect. It doesn't mean that you don't have difficulties. It doesn't mean that you don't have challenges in the relationship. But it means that despite all of those challenges and difficulties, that you're, at the end of the day, you're still able to say I love you to each other. You still hug and kiss and make up, and you know, and do those things. That's an indication that you're in a soulmate connection. So that soulmate connection is usually, I find, that's like the majority of people, I would say, are in soulmate connections. And well, yeah, I suppose. And those soulmate connections are usually, again, they're still about learning. They're still about evolving. Like all relationships are, even twin flame journeys are definitely about learning and growing and evolving. And actually, those are the most intense versions of it. Soulmate is like a softer version of this like spiritual evolution, but it can still be challenging in some ways, for sure. And in these soulmate connections, the communication is the number one thing that I find really just balances things out. Because if two people are meant to be together, if they have come together and they're meant to be together long term, and they just have a bunch of kind of shit in the way that's preventing them from truly experiencing that relationship in a harmonious way, then in that case, it's usually a communication issue, and that can be fixed. That's the good news, right? That's the awesome stuff. Like, hey, we can actually work on this, and we can do this because our love for each other is actually strong enough, and it is foundationally solid enough that we can build on this. We just have to tweak a certain few things, you know. We got to renovate and put out some new windows, right? It's like a house. A relationship is truly like a house. It's built up the same way. The foundation needs to be solid, and then the walls and the windows, doors, everything else that goes up on top of that is also going to be solid. And then there's going to be a good flow of energy in and out of that relationship. And the number one thing in the communication that can and should be fixed is, it was so obvious. I don't know, I was like sitting here on Saturday night, and all of a sudden it just kind of dawned on me, like, wow, like, you know what? If people could just start asking their partners, like, how do you need me to show up in this relationship? What would you like to see me do more of? What would you like to experience with me more that you feel right now is lacking in our relationship, that we don't have enough of, right? And then doing this on both sides, you know, both people asking each other this simple question of just, can you just have enough compassion for yourself and for your partner to be willing to ask that and say, how can I show up differently for you? Like, what do you need from me, or what would you like more of from me? You know, and when you guys figure this out, and when both people are, and the key to this is 100% authenticity and honesty. And I always say to people, and actually authenticity ties in so much to real connections and to soulmate relationships. Like authenticity is a must in any relationship. If you're not willing to be authentic, like the real version of you, the version of you that has boundaries, the version of you that knows what they want, knows what they need out of a connection. If you're willing to be that person, then there is so much that can be done to further that connection, to really help it bloom and blossom into something really beautiful. Blossom past stagnation, past a certain plateau, right? Because I find people hit plateaus in their connection. As I talk to individuals, I could really see how certain connections plateau out, especially long ones. When you've been in a connection for like, 10, 20, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, there can be a certain level of stagnancy that happens kind of naturally in the relationship. And that stagnancy can be lifted or can be eliminated through simply having these conversations, through checking in with each other and saying like, I don't know, babe, like I got really bored, like I just find like every day is the same. We do the same stuff all the time. We hang out with the same people, whatever. Like, maybe you need to express that you need more adventure. Hey, can we do some different things, some new things? Can we try like maybe going somewhere like on a completely different trip than we usually do? Or can we try maybe hanging out with different people or just, I don't know, like trying different things, right? To freshen things up, to bring life back into the connection. Usually when stagnancy is in a connection, it's always because people are just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over for sometimes years. And then they're like, yeah, I'm bored. And then they start turning in different directions, right? They start looking outside of the connection to experience some kind of fulfillment that they're missing within the connection. And I just know, and I see it all the time, that this is a huge reason why people end up cheating. Even if it's like not physically cheating, but emotionally cheating or mentally cheating, or, kind of like sometimes people or whatever will fantasize about other people, being intimate with other people, all kinds of different things, and I know it's a concern that comes up a lot in conversation when I'm talking to people, and wives expressing to me like, I don't know what's happening, but like I feel like he's kind of, looking the other way and whatever. And in those situations, that happens because there is a certain level of boredom. It's like, challenge your partner. Can you challenge yourself enough to like change, to become better? Have you gotten really comfortable? And that's another thing I ask people all the time. Like, if you get a little bit too comfortable in a relationship, then what can happen is you kind of forget to take care of yourself, and this just kind of goes back to self-love again and self-respect. Like, do you love and respect yourself enough to say, I'm going to take care of my body, I'm going to eat well to make sure I have good skin, I'm going to make sure I really like do my nails, take care of my hair, like put some makeup on. And I'm not saying you got to do like a full face every day, but just like little things, right? Little things. And our partners notice these things, so like a guy will always notice when a girl looks fine, you know what I'm saying? So just like bring the excitement back, and when you communicate with each other and when you ask each other what they need from you and what you need from them, and you express that, I actually recommend, and I say this to people all the time, can you create a list and actually write a list down? These are all the things that I would love to experience with you, that I would love for you to do differently, or blah, 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 right? All of it. Everything from take out the trash once a week to like whatever it is, more sex, like whatever it is you feel you need in the relationship, more intimacy, more foreplay. Can we do this? And even when it comes to sex, I talk about this all the time with people. Like, when it comes to intimacy in your relationship, are you expressive? Are you telling your partner what you like? Or are you just kind of sitting there letting them do their thing and going, great, that was fun? Not. Like, are you expressive? Are you actually telling them what feels good and what doesn't feel good? Because, our partners are not mind readers. Like, you have to be willing to say what you like and what you don't like. And, what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and just all kinds of different things like that people just are not willing to express. And I just get so shocked, I guess, and so surprised about that, because I'm a super verbal. I feel like I'm a pretty good communicator. Like, if I don't like something, man, you're gonna know. You're just gonna know. I can't hold it in. I can't, like, it feels wrong to me. And that's a huge part of my authenticity, is just really needing to express like how I feel and what I feel. And and if I can't do that in a relationship, then that relationship's like dead, because it's never going to work. Like, if I can't be authentic and if I can't express to you exactly what I need, because you're snubbing it, because you have an issue with what I just said, because now you're taking it personally, and now you're getting your ego all and your back all up about it, then that relationship is never going to work, because that means you're not allowing me to be myself, and I just need to be myself, right? Because that's how I feel best. And what I've always expressed too is that, my partner also just needs to be themselves. Don't put on a fucking show for me. Like, don't put on a mask. Like, just be you. I just want you to be you. I need you to show me your heart and your soul, and like, and cry if you need to cry in front of me. My God, like, yeah, express your feelings. Let me know that you can be vulnerable, so that I can also feel comfortable being vulnerable, right? Like, these are all things that matter in relationships. And I think so many people don't realize this, or you know what? And a lot of times, actually, it hasn't never been modeled to people. That's one of the biggest issues I find, is most people have not had this kind of stuff modeled to them. It's like their parents were unfortunately not like that. And that's so sad to me. It's so sad. But like, if I think about it, it was never modeled to me either. Not through my parents, that's for sure. They certainly didn't know how to really like express love and show love to each other, and have that like level of self-love and self-respect, and then have that love and respect within, like, mutual love and respect within the relationship. Like, these things were not modeled to me. So I'm learning this as I go, right? And figuring all of this out as I go. And that's why I'm sharing it with you guys, because people need to hear this. People need to understand that, a lot of times your relationship doesn't need to go into the shitter. Like, it can be replenished, it could be revived, it could be brought back to life, it could really become something brand new and beautiful. You just have to go through the journey of like willing to, work on those things. And then when your partner gives you that list of, these are all the things that I wish, were a little bit different, or that you did differently, look at that list and look at it in a really honest and authentic kind of way. Like, look at it with your heart and say, and ask yourself, how many of these things do I actually have the power to change? And most likely, you're going to have the power to change like 99% of it, right? Some things, could be there on that list that you might think like, okay, you're asking me to be like a completely different person. So that might be a game changer. And that's also something to pay attention to, look out for, right? If your spouse is actually kind of giving you this kind of list that you feel is like, okay, wow, like you like nothing about me, then you need to maybe scratch your head and ask yourself, like, is this really the connection I want to be in? Is this really going to be something fulfilling long term, right? So, and then I just want to quickly mention twin flame connections. So twin flame connections are like a whole different ballgame altogether from karmic and from soulmate relationships. Twin flames are like kind of like next level above soulmate connections. So what twin flame connections often are a splitting, oftentimes, of literally one soul into two parts. So a masculine and a feminine. I said it backwards because that's my left side. So feminine and masculine. But that, and I mean, there's a lot of different types of twin flames, but twin flame journeys tend to be really difficult. They tend to be one that can certainly kick your ass, and it actually full on propels you into like spiritual awakening. That's a twin flame journey. So that's like a whole another ball game. Like I said, it's a completely different. It's very, very high vibrational. It's a very deep love. It's usually Past life connection is in there big time, meaning that, you know, these two souls have experienced each other in previous lifetimes and most likely have had many previous lifetime journeys. So there's a lot of different things with twin flame connections, and there are actually a lot to work out usually in twin flame connection as well. It might actually seem like a karmic initially because there's always a bunch of bullshit in the beginning. So there's a lot of challenge and difficulty, but they tend to activate each other when they come together. So there's a massive activation that happens in a twin flame connection. To those two people, when they first meet, it's just like an instant kind of knowing and a feeling that something is different about this person. And then there's a whole entire journey that they have to go through. Separation is usually always involved. So initially when they come together, those two twins always come together with a massive amount of baggage, and then that baggage has to be worked out and cleared out basically and processed, and healed. And then once all of that takes place and happens, then usually union can happen again and they can come back together. So, you know, there's, and I'm just mentioning these because it's important to understand what kind of a journey you're walking at the moment. You know, what kind of a journey are you in at the moment? And if you are in separation with someone, then really check in with your heart space. You cannot evaluate whether you're in a twin flame connection or not, or even in a soulmate connection or not, with your mind. You can only assess with the heart, because only the heart will be actually fully honest with you. It will never ever lie about whether you're meant to have a journey with that person or not. The mind will. The mind will always trick you. So, and try to convince you that, oh, it's no, just run the other way, right? Or it'll say, run towards that individual, and they could totally be just a karmic. But, you know, either way, it's like, I find nowadays that there's just no right and wrong when it comes to connections, because either way, even if it is a person that you're super drawn back to and they end up being a karmic, you were drawn back to them so that you can have an experience and a journey with them, so that you can really learn certain lessons and heal certain things within yourself that, you know, those people or that karmic would be mirroring to you, that are challenges, that are difficulties, different stuff that you're going to experience with them. Like if there's a boundary issue, then that's what you need to learn. If they're constantly like pushing you to do things you don't want to do, or talking down to you, or just giving you a hard time, or being a psychotic crazy ass, then, you know, those are all indications that there's huge lessons around boundaries, around self-love and self-nurturing and different things like that that you need to heal and work on. So, but the communication is the number one thing. It is the most important thing actually in all relationships. So can you be willing to express your needs? Can you be willing to tell your partner what it is that you need in all different areas of life? You know, even if it's like work thing, like work is actually a huge challenge for a lot of couples. So a lot of people tell me that, you know, oh, well, you know, he works like these crazy hours and stuff, so we barely see each other and blah, blah. Like, that's not okay. That is not okay. So that is something that needs to shift and change within the connection. And they're going to need to look at how to work differently, or perhaps work a different job, or just completely like revamp. And maybe the two of you need to sit down and look at your finances and see what you can do to change that. Because I hate hearing, and I hear it all the time, like work being this excuse of why the relationship is failing. It's like, oh my God, listen, like first and foremost, especially if there's children involved, right? First and foremost, the first thing that needs to be balanced is the relationship. Work does not come first. I know we have to provide for our families, but work shouldn't come first, and not in that kind of way where it's like they're seriously just out of the house constantly and you barely see each other, they barely see the kids. And I see this with both men and women doing this. So that too really, really needs to be balanced. And I think as we move towards the future, I think this is something that we're going to be all working on and looking at on a much higher level. Just, we already are, right? The pandemic has already kind of kickstarted this for us, for so many of us to reevaluate, you know, how much time we're away from home, or how much time we are home, or we could be home, right? And these are things that we're now looking at with a lot more scrutiny, which is fantastic, because we need to get out of this whole 9-to-5 cycle. That's bullshit. It's way too long, way too many hours of work, and not enough family time, not enough leisure time, not enough time to romanticize each other, not enough time to, romanticize the connection, to romanticize the entire, you know, family life. Like, these are all things that we have power over, that we can change, that we can bring into a much higher place. We just have to choose it. So That's, I feel, the message that I have right now about communication, about connections, about relationships, and how to go about really truly elevating where you're at. And if you are in a toxic relationship, I'm going to say it again, like, you need to really look at this. And this little communication exercise, I think, is a really great evaluator to help determine if you're in a toxic connection or not. Because based on your partner's answers, and then based on how they show up, and even when you have a conversation, are they kind of pointing the finger and, well, you don't do this and you don't do that, no, 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 no. If it sounds like bitching, then that's exactly what it is. Then that means that they're totally coming from their ego. They're not in their heart space. And it might not work out. Like, I just want to be real with you. It might not work out. You may not be able to repair that with that individual if that's the way that they want to keep seeing it, and if they just want to keep doing this and not actually doing this and saying, okay, well, what can I change about myself, and what can I do to show up differently for my partner? If they're not asking themselves that question, then you know that they're not prepared to grow in that relationship. They're not prepared to put in the work, and they certainly are not feeling a level of love towards themselves where their cup is overflowing and they're able to give to you as well. And they're able to really truly love you in a compassionate, unconditional kind of way. So evaluate where you're at in your connection and how you show up in that connection. And just, really ask yourself, is this something that is going to make me happy long term? Or is this something that we can work on? Or is this something that I just need to let go? So thank you so much for watching, for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you love this content, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.